Today's lesson is about one of the smallest pieces in chess. It's called a pawn, and each player is given 8 pawns at the start of a chess game. They sit on the second or seventh rank of the chessboard, and considerably, one pawn isn't very powerful, but with 8 of them on the chessboard, they're very powerful. Firstly, let's talk about how the pawn looks like. So this is a chess pawn, and they have a circle and a base at the bottom. And considerably, I feel like pawns aren't the biggest piece ever because pawns. But in later lessons, we will go over how pawns are important to the chessboard. Even though they're very small, they relate to even cars on the highway. Have you been on a highway before? Cars run on a smooth, consistently wise speed of 62.5 miles an hour, or 100 kilometers an hour if you're in Canada. But as you can see, let's talk about how it moves, and this is why I told you about cars, because cars, you can see, cars never move backwards on the highway, right? I don't recommend it even, because if you go backward on the highway at 100 kilometers an hour, first of all, you can't brake. Second of all, what happens? You crash, right? And this is very similar because cars and pawns are very similar because pawns never move backwards in chess. Yeah, that's right. So pawns are not very powerful. But you can see that pawns on the starting square can move 2 squares or 1 square. It is your choice. So on the starting squares, A2, B2, C2, D2, E2, F2, G2, and H2, you can see that moving a pawn 2 squares is allowed. And also, if it's your choice, you can also move it one square if you like. That's a good thing about the pawn. So pawns can never move backward. They cannot go here. But they can always move forward. So on the starting square, it can move 2 squares or 1 squares. But if it's not on that square, on the starting square, you can only move it 1 square. Until the end of the chessboard, where we have pawn promotion. So when a pawn reaches the end of the chessboard, unlike in checkers, where a pawn where they don't have pawns, but in chess, when a pawn reaches the end of a chessboard, they can promote to a bishop, a knight, a rook, or a queen. And most times, in my chess career, I've most time promoted to queen. There's only one time that I remember, personally, that I've promoted to knight or bishop. And actually, we'll talk about later lessons about why promoting to bishop or knight is important sometimes in the end game. But most times, you like to promote to a queen. Because it's the most powerful piece on the chessboard. So yeah, that's about pawn promotion. And also, now we're going to talk about how it captures. So this is a position where it's white to move. So pawns, unlike other pieces, the knight, which can jump over pieces, pawns cannot jump over pieces. They always move straight, but very slowly. They capture diagonally. Capturing diagonally is the pawn's strength, because let's say it's a position like this, and it's white to move, the pawn here, remember, if not on the 2nd or 7th rank, 7th rank, if it's a black pawn, you can move forward, but if it's a white pawn, you can only move 1 square. That's an exception. But you can see that when a pawn is on the 4th rank, or 5th rank, 6th rank, 7th rank, 3rd rank, or 3rd rank for white, and for black, the other opposite, you can see that the pawn captures diagonally. So As I said, that in this exception, you see that pawns always move forward, but they can also capture, unlike other pieces. So pawns capture diagonally, and that bishop is taken off the chessboard. And now we're going to talk about one of the exceptions in chess. So it's black to move here. And you can see in this position, we have something called en passant. En passant is exception. So you can see if we flip the board around. Oh yeah, I can. Okay. So you can see this pawn, the black pawn, sitting on the 7th rank, can move 2 squares. But this isn't fair. So a few years ago, in the 1970s, chess improved because you can see once this pawn moved 2 squares, and this pawn could not ever, remember, pawns can only move forward, can never catch up to that black pawn. So chess made a new rule that if this pawn moves 2 squares, and if it's beside each other, we have something called en passant. If you ever learned French before, you'll know this. En passant means in passing in French. And once this pawn moves 2 squares, this is the part where it gets complicated, but follow me here and you'll understand. In later lessons, we will cover more details. But today, the basic is that if this pawn moves 2 squares, right, it's side by side. Remember, it's side by side, so this pawn can capture, and this pawn is automatically taken off the chessboard. So that's a cool tactic that pawns have exceptions to other pieces. It's something called en passant. Be sure to check out the practice lessons for the pawn, and be sure to subscribe for more content.